The conscious man.
Welcome to another episode of the podcast.
What is a conscious man? Ihsan Abbas. Welcome to the show, bro.
Thank you, brother.
Here we are, man.
Here we are.
The conscious man. So, typically, I start out the podcast by asking my guests, what does it mean to you to be a conscious man?
It's a little layered because on one hand, I don't see consciousness as like a flick of the switch. We're like, now I'm conscious. I see us coming into greater consciousness. But, and if we are to see consciousness and unconsciousness, the conscious man, I would say, is the one who is aware that he's also holding the controller. He's not just a character in the game. So he has this awareness that there's something beyond his identity. He's awake to himself in that sense, and not the self of the false identity, but the true self, the eternal essence. And so the conscious man is devoted and consistent in making the unconscious conscious. And so that which governs his experience of the game, the automation, becomes more of a deeper embodiment, and he's actually choosing his own adventure in that sense.
What's the difference between the false self and the true self?
Yeah. The false self is basically the sets of beliefs about who you believe you are. Your identifications, your attachments, the labels, who you've been told to be, what you need to be. And so that false self that is essentially the lens in which you're moving through this life, right? As we start to chip away of all that we are not, we start to embody all that we are. And so the true self is the one that exists beyond duality. The true self is the one that is not seeing the other as separate. The true self is the one that is taking responsibility for the experience of reality and seeing yourself in all the reflections in this house of mirrors.
So essentially the conscious and the unconscious, right? And I look at it typically as like, are you living your life based on something that is someone else's idea of how to play the game?
Yeah.
Or are you living your life based on how you actually want to play this game?
Yeah. So
right?
basically, are you playing the game or is the game playing you?
Yeah.
And then this concept of like an NPC, a non-playable character, like if we look at what it means to be reactionary or to have a response ability, the ability to respond to life as it unfolds, they're two vastly different experiences that we're having. One is where we are reacting to life. We are governed by automations, by programs, by these beliefs, by the cage that we're living in. Whereas our ability to respond is coming from a place of like choice, choosing which path you want to walk.
Free will, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. And we had that conversation a long time ago. I remember, and you know, we'll go through a little bit of our story, but I remember one time I asked you, it was probably like a year and a half ago, I remember I asked you, what is free will? Is free will a real thing? You know, and it's like, the way I see free will now is like, it's almost like we're born in a set of circumstances that is completely beyond our control. And as we go through this game, we gain more and more free will. And that's like the consciousness coming in and then having that ability to respond to life instead of just being played by the game.
Right.
Right. So cool, man. Yeah. I love that answer. But just to go back a little bit,
Yeah.
I want to tell a little bit about your story, because your story is super interesting, and then leading up to how you and I met and our journey together, bro.
Yeah. It's been quite the journey so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, where do I begin with my story? I think I was just tired of my own shit. Really, I was tired of being a victim to my life. I was tired of projecting my pain onto the world, needing the world to be what I believed I needed it to be in order to feel fulfilled. And it was basically like this path of self-destruction where deeply I was feeling so unworthy of love and living that way and treating myself that way, seeking for that worthiness outside of myself, money, women, and it led me down a dark path.
What led you to that? Like, because I know I've heard your story from like your early 20s, but
Yeah.
what was your childhood like? What do you think like ultimately was like your base level programming that led you to seeking validation in the external world and essentially self-sabotaging and not feeling worthy?
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, my childhood was really good for what it was. I mean, my parents are super loving, always had everything I wanted. We lived comfortably, very privileged. And yet underneath the surface was a lot of generational trauma. Parents have seen wars. My father's side, Palestinian, lost their country. My grandfather and his whole family kicked out of the country. So underneath it all was this like deep grief that was just coped with, rightfully so.
Yeah, sure.
But in terms of my upbringing, and I think that we can all kind of relate to this to some degree in this game where the current kind of coding is through reward and punishment, being deemed worthy of heaven, in a sense, like only when you're good enough will you be able to reach heaven. And so, you know, the process of socialization at a young age, essentially like my parents, and I don't want to speak for everybody's parents, but my understanding is that it's very similar, is that, you know, Ihsan is only a good boy if he does X, Y, and Z. And so then without X, Y, and Z, your baseline becomes you are not good enough without it.
Yeah.
And so through, you know, this system of pats on the back, getting my dad's attention and love through excelling at like sports and school. So that started to become part of my identity. The athlete, the smart guy, the popular kid, getting girls, getting attention from girls, this and that. And so my childhood was also very aggressive, a lot of toxicity in terms of projection and anger, and yet it was very loving. So I was experiencing this duality, like my parents are extremely loving people and giving and open-hearted and charitable and stuff, but there was this shadow that was super present in the house as well, that revolved around emotionality and yeah, so my childhood, I would say, was a roller coaster, a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then that led you into your 20s, where did you start partying in your 20s?
Oh, man, I was a stoner. I was a pothead.
Okay.
Playing video games in my friend's basement from like 17 to 30. I didn't start partying and hard drugs and stuff like that until 30 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And what led you to that?
Divorce. Yeah, I was in a relationship since 15 years old. Got married at 25. Deep in my addictions, deep in my grief, deep in my shit. Weed, porn, video games. That was like the coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And so relationship ended at like 29, turning 30. And my entire identity, like think, man, you're with one person for 14 years. My entire identity just came crumbling down. And so at the time, how the story goes is that my ex-wife left me. And so where I was then, it's like the only person that knows you doesn't love you anymore. And so you are not worthy of love. And everything that was already very present just became extremely overwhelming to handle. And so enter alcohol, cocaine, partying, women. Just like I took all my demons with me and we went to go escape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you essentially went on your, like, just this rampage of partying and like really playing out everything that was coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately probably from your childhood. Well, and obviously ancestral.
Yeah.
Right. And okay, so take me through that then. You're 30 years old, you start partying.
Yeah. Darkness, man. Darkness. I would be doing cocaine at work. before basketball games, before beach volleyball.
Selling like a motherfucker though on cocaine.
Crushing it.
Okay.
But yeah, it was dark, man. I went through quite the dark period, but on the surface, everything was fine. I had a great paying job. I had a social life. I was in shape. Everything was fine on the surface, but inside I'm like rotting to the core. And so this just continued until an eventual implosion. And I truly feel like it was all orchestrated for like my soul to step in and be like, you're good, move out of the way. It's time to shift everything. And so, yeah, I had moved from Vancouver, from Toronto to Vancouver, brought all my demons with me. The partying took it to the next level. And that was like 3 years later, everything came crashing down, like really badly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, deep depression.
Yeah. I went through a period where suicidal ideations was normal. I thought I was bipolar. I started getting medicated for being bipolar. Told my family I was bipolar, my friends, like this. I figured it out. This is why I'm feeling like this, because I'm bipolar. Like I thought I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
Truly.
Did you deal with depression like any time before 30 years old?
No.
Okay.
No.
It's a very similar story to me, dude.
Yeah.
Because, just the way I was raised in the chaotic environment that I was raised in, always having to look towards the future, but also like very much like we deal with what we have to deal with by laughing and being optimistic as possible.
Yeah.
Right. And so super fucking grateful now for everything that I went through and the man that it turned me into and all the skills that it gave me in such a huge way. Like I'm very decisive and like good at planning, but also on the shadow side of that is like very anxious, very not present. Right. And I was not even aware of any of this until I was about 30 years old.
Yeah.
And I even had somebody on a podcast. I talk about this all the time, but when I was like 28, 29, I was on a podcast and a guy was like, how do you deal with depression? And, I went through some shit, bro. I went through some shit like at a young age, like things that a kid should not see with my dad. And I looked at him like, I've never dealt with depression. I don't know what that's like. I don't know what to tell you. And then 30 hit. And bro, I fell into this dark night and like all my shit of all those years on top of a lot of ancestral shit that was passed down to me, just fully came to the surface. And I got to know depression. Like, oh, this is what people are talking about when they talk about the depressed, right? Before that, it was just like, you're not depressed. Like, stop saying you're depressed. Stop saying you have depression. It's like, just go do something about it. Right. And I was in this phase of my life where it was just like I was trying to do everything I possibly could. And the universe was just basically not allowing anything I was doing to fix the problem.
Right. Right. Yeah. And if you think about it, like, okay, forget the notion of depression. But what do you believe happens to a man when he's not living a life of meaning? And so if you think of like we are made in the image of our creator, and so man is made to create. And we're in a system right now, in a society right now where man is just consuming.
Yeah.
And so the man who does not create becomes a miserable creature. And why you see all these high suicide rates amongst men and high depression rates amongst men and all this stuff is it's a epidemic of meaninglessness.
Yeah.
Right? This man who's been designed to be of purpose, of service, to show up for this world is now told to go sit in this cubicle and work for the American dream. And that when you buy that car, when you get this house, when you get your 2 vacations a year and all of this stuff, like you will be happy. And similarly, like you, I did everything that I thought was going to make me happy.
Yeah.
And every corner I turned, it was just more emptiness. And I was like, yo, I'm not supposed to be living life like this. Like I was selling credit card machines since I was 23 years old. And by the age of 32, 33, I'm like, my soul is not meant to just be selling credit card machines. Like there's got to be more here. There's got to be a different way to live. And I think where a lot of men suffer is having no purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, and not necessarily no purpose, but no soul purpose, right?
Right.
And it's like, cause dude, I was creating like a motherfucker, but I was creating from that unconscious side of, if I buy this, if I get this house, if I have this title,
Yeah.
you know, and then I'll get validated. So it's not that I wasn't creating, it was that I was not creating from my soul's purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I was creating from my ego's purpose. And that had to be shifted in this huge fucking way, where my depression didn't come from not creating, it came from creating the wrong things. And the universe brought me to this fucking halt of like, nope, you don't get to fucking create anymore. And just basically almost cut me off from creating the things that I thought were going to validate me in the eyes of other people. And then I had to go through this period of like putting all this effort into continuing to try and build this life that I was building based off of other people validating me and just nothing working, until I started to move into this more uncomfortable area of seeing that I had to create something that was more aligned with my soul purpose, you know. And for me, that was men's work, you know, because dude, when I started getting the nudge to start to work with men, I did not fucking want to do it. I was very closed off, very antisocial. Like I wouldn't go to parties. I wouldn't go to events where I didn't know everyone there. Even with the people I loved, especially if I was in public, I was like very socially anxious. And so I would just kind of be an asshole because I was like always on guard and like not present. And it really pushed me to like do the work to be able to open up, to move towards creating something that has more impact in the world and something that was much more aligned with my soul, which has been working with men, you know. But I fought the shit out of it. I resisted the shit out of it. I just wanted to keep selling trucks and build this life and be a lone wolf and, you know, stay in my house and mind my business. And I just had to go through this whole process of just being cracked open by the universe.
Yeah.
And opening my heart and being able to like really get social and like learn how to talk to people that I didn't know, you know, learn how to love, really learn how to be loved. And it was through this whole cracking open process that was extremely uncomfortable. But luckily I kind of saw from the very beginning like what the purpose was, even though I fought it along the way. Like I kind of knew where I was going.
Yeah.
And luckily that made it a little bit easier, because it was a deep, dark time for me, for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you were called to service in your dark period. Right. We often might think like our purpose is going to come when we're like floating on cloud nine in this bliss and have such clarity. And I know, and oh my God, and here it is, and let's do this. And it's like, no, you might have to be deep in the trenches, like drudging through the swamp and retrieving these aspects of yourself. And I think that every man is born with this awareness of something greater for him. There's something greater. And that, you know, one thing I wanted to say to the guys listening, like oftentimes, and this came to me today, so I'm just sharing it fresh, like oftentimes when we start to awaken to ourselves, we innately want to be of service. We innately want to share our gifts with the world. Like your unique soul expression is the rarest thing in existence. And so you're going to have this calling, this desire to share it with the world, right? And so we awaken, we start to have this feeling of like, I don't belong in the world that I was brought up in anymore. There's like this dissonance that I don't fit in here anymore. And then what happens is we sense this spaciousness, which many people sense as emptiness. And so there's this longing to fill the space. And so instantly it's like, what's my purpose? What can I do? And it's like, bro, just chill. Look, what if this spaciousness was required for your purpose to then fill it? And so instead of being uncomfortable with the quote unquote emptiness, can you see it as part of the process? Everything in this realm was created from a demand. What does that mean? Everything that was birthed into form started because there was an awareness of a spaciousness that was needed.
A vacuum, in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you're in that position right now listening and you're like, I don't know what my purpose is. I know I want to be of service. I have these gifts. Like, what do I do? First of all, your purpose is not coming to save you from that emptiness. That's not at a soul level. You're not looking to be saved by your purpose.
You'll remain in that vacuum until you get past that.
Yeah. And so you'll continue to fill that vacuum as more of you is embodied, the vacuum gets filled. Right? And also, too, the other thing is that no thing exists. Nothing doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So even that quote unquote emptiness is not empty space. It's like fertile space for life to take shape. And so if you're feeling like you don't have a purpose and like you're like, okay, I've come into this greater realization of myself. I'm doing this work on myself. I'm committed to seeing myself, but I don't fit into this current structure. Perfect. That's part of the process. Be patient, have compassion for yourself, have grace for yourself, trust, be curious, be open, follow these little signals that are pulling you in certain directions. Whatever you've gone through, likely you're there to help others to see. And oftentimes we think we need to be at this finish line, like, oh, I'm not ready. Like you may have thought, like, I'm not ready to start all of this stuff. But the thing is, who says that we will ever reach a place where we feel ready? And maybe the whole point is to just be one step ahead and then lead from there, as opposed to leading from 1,000 steps ahead.
Yeah.
Like maybe you're just meant to lead from one step ahead. And that's it. And that there is no actual finish line. And I think that's also another kind of inversion or trap of consciousness, is as men, we want to be deemed good enough. Like, Chase, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's no finish line to that. You'll never reach a point where you feel complete, because this path mirrors your eternal essence. There's no end to it. And so every step you take becomes the beta test for the next step. Everything you do is a beta test for the next step, for the next step. And so be patient wherever you are. Like, be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Just take the step that's right in front of you and trust that the path will continue to unfold and like open up to you as you do so.
Yeah, and that's really that's how you know you're on your soul's path, right? Because when you're on your ego's path, that spaciousness, that vacuum doesn't exist, because your ego is trying to map the path out so that you feel safe, right? Mm-hmm. But your ego wants to traverse this game, your soul wants to traverse this game one step at a time. It wants to walk into that spaciousness, right? Because that's where all the magic exists. But the problem is we see that with that spaciousness starts to open up within us, and it feels like darkness, and it feels like we're lost.
Yeah. And then the weight of your existence becomes so heavy because now you're faced with your greatness. Why do we grab the phone when we're bored? It's because we sense a spaciousness where my attention can go into, and it's so grand. The pressure is so grand, even just like the concept of boredom. The pressure is so grand as to like, what do you want to do right now? You're feeling the discomfort of your boredom. What do you want to do? We oftentimes run to alleviate that pressure. And so when we feel the spaciousness of what is our potentiality, now what are we doing with that? Right? So I think too, the thing with the ego, the creation from the ego is never satisfied. So when you're trying to fill that void, that spaciousness, that vacuum that you're speaking about from ego, it's only feeding upon itself. So you're constantly hungry for the next thing, Whereas when you're filling it from soul, it's perpetuating life eternally, and it's growing from that. So not only there's no finish line, but you're not feeling empty. You're like fulfilling yourself and feeding yourself and nourishing yourself from that growth.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we feel that spaciousness from our ego, we stay stuck in the loop, and it's the opposite of progress.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're always feeding that spaciousness with the past, with what we know. And so you stay in that loop rather than opening up with your soul to that spaciousness and then allowing God to fill the space and come in and show you something that hasn't existed previously for you. And that's true progress. That's actual spinning out of that karmic loop that we get stuck in, right? It's progress. It's like true soul fulfilling food.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And we're getting to a place where now we're able to create abundance from our own creation. Whereas for me, at least, it was your money is coming from somebody else cutting you a paycheck, and it's coming from you being a slave. You're working, you're putting your attention and energy and time into somebody else's thing to build that up that is not in alignment with your soul, right? And so when we start to now tap into how I can create my own abundance, I'm like everything, the food I'm eating was paid for from my creation. And so, you know, many men, their creative life force energy is squandered in a Kleenex. And so think of like, for me, man, I didn't start to create things until like 35 years old.
Yeah.
34 years old. Until then, it was just consumption, working, consumption, striving for the dangling carrot to trying to like find some semblance of fulfillment and happiness in the next thing. And it's like, man, this consumption is just misery because it's never full. That ego drive, it's never full. It's never satiated. It's always wanting more. So like, how do you break free from that? You know?
Yeah. And that seems like a common theme too, for a lot of men. Like I see almost like this, like turning on of a switch within men right around 35 years old.
Yeah.
Like so many men that I know, it's like they really, really struggled. They really couldn't figure it out. They were constantly consuming. And then at 35, it's like they turn this switch to like really start creating and really start living from more like soul-led purpose. Why do you think that is? Is there some sort of like mechanism within the matrix that
maybe it's like at around 33 years old, a lot of men start to realize like, yo, okay, I've been in a career since 22, whatever. Now what? Yeah. Now what? Do I just live the American dream? Like I was living the American dream at 25, making six figures, was married, had a house, had 2 cars, we're going on vacations. Did nothing. It did nothing for me. It didn't make me happy. It appeased the false identity, wearing my suit, winning awards for best sales rep, this and that, driving a nice car, whatever, being that guy. It really is just emptiness, and it's just masks on masks, trying to belong in a world that I wasn't even meant to be in. In a world that's looking to siphon and suck from my soul. And it's like, whoa, I'm just like feeding it. And I'm coming back into this, like, basically this like toxic relationship. Like, pick me. Am I worthy now? And it just eats at you, man.
Yeah, and because you're feeding an endless monster,
right?
That will continue to grow, and that monster's job is to make you miserable. And the bigger it gets, the more miserable you become.
Yeah.
Right. So, what was the turning point for you? You said things blew up.
Yeah.
At a certain point.
Yeah. Man, it was a big implosion. Kind of to keep a long story short, essentially my self-destructive behaviors caught up to me. The cocaine, the drinking, the partying. I ended a relationship over it at the time, which really like, I just fell, because that period I was telling you where I was like thinking I'm bipolar, that was right after that period. And so I was in it, man. I fucking hated myself. I couldn't even look at the man in the mirror. Like I would walk by mirrors. I was just miserable. Like, how could I be the cause of my own unhappiness? How can I be the cause of so much suffering? Okay, I get it. Your ex-wife leaves you, and in that victimization story, she's the cause of why you're unhappy. She left, but like
still external,
right?
Yeah.
But now in this situation, there was nobody else to blame but myself. It was like the perfect storm of like, bro, are you tired of your own shit?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to do with yourself? How are you going to build respect back up for yourself? And so that's what I did. I started doing everything, bro. Everything. Counseling, anger management, AA meetings, kickboxing, yoga, journaling, like clean diet. I was having a gratitude practice. Like, bro, I was literally doing everything I thought of at the time was going to
Fix you?
fix me. Yeah.
This was around 33?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's when everything started to change. I like started to dive into esoteric teachings, reading all
This is when you got into spirituality.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meditating every day, like deep self-study, and it just took off. Plant medicine came in at that time as well. Ayahuasca started to come in, and it just like all of a sudden this new existence began to open up, and I couldn't get enough of it, man. I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know how everything worked. I started to, because one of the things from my childhood, and not even just my childhood, my entire life was video games. And so this layer of playing video games had me interacting now from an awakened state of life as a video game. And so I wanted to understand the nature of the game. I wanted to understand the nature of the character, the player, like how is this working? How can I play the game at a higher level? And it just started to really open up. And it wasn't until my counselor at the time, Daniela, shout out, I came to her and I was like, okay, I'm awake now. I'm doing all the things, you know, going to hot yoga every day. I'm doing all these things. I got my crystals in my altar, and I'm like, but I'm still fucking miserable. Why? And she looks at me and she's like, I think you're better suited for this. And I was like, huh? She's like, yeah, I feel like you'd be better suited to do something like this. And so I looked into a coaching program, did my coaching certificate, still very green, not understanding where life was going to take me. I had no fucking clue, man. I just knew, you know what? This is my identity a new identity started to form, and this became like another path for me to learn about myself. So I did this coaching certificate, became a life coach, and through that program, somebody asked me like, what would it look like to start a men's group? What would a men's group led by Ihsan look like? And I was like, okay, I'll start a men's group. And so I started the fellowship then. And I started coaching one-on-one as well. And things just continued to take shape. And it really wasn't, if it wasn't for the men's group, I swear to you, if it wasn't for the men's group, I would not be here today. Because that responsibility to lead a group of men, to be in a group of men as well that are aligned on their path of self-mastery, it was the catalyst for my growth. Yeah. For me to learn about what it means to be in integrity and in truth, and to really start now committing to working on myself at another level, because the awareness came in that, you can't play in two worlds, bro.
Yeah.
You can't be holding circle on Wednesday night and then going and partying on Friday.
Yeah.
Or you can't be going out to a rave on a Saturday and then coming down off of all this Molly and then holding circle on Wednesday. Yeah. Like, you can't do this. You got to commit fully to this path. And that changed the fabric of my existence. Like, yeah.
I feel the same way. I've said that on the podcast before, dude. I wouldn't fucking be here if it wasn't for my group of men.
Yeah.
Because, and I really believe, like, when a man is in a dark place, he needs other men to help pull him out of it. You know, for me, it was like, I say it all the time, I started my men's group for myself because I needed it. I needed those men, and I called them in to help pull me out of that darkness. You know, and I think that's why the work that we're doing, I believe, is so important, that men need to start coming together, because we are the ones that help pull each other up to the next step. Yeah. And it's like, you'll pull a man up, and then he'll help pull you up to the next step. Yeah. You know, and my men did that for me, absolutely, bro. Like, if it hadn't been for my men's group, if I had continued down this same path, when I put that gun on my mouth, I would have pulled the trigger. The only thing that stopped me was my group of men, that I knew I had them, that I knew that they had my back 100%, and I knew they could help pull me out of it.
Yeah. Well, if you think of what we're carrying as men, like, bro, where else can you go and unpack this shit and actually start to alchemize the things that are keeping you down, other than in in the arena with a group of men who are doing the same. Because what happens is you come together, sure, the brotherhood and this and that, but energetically what's happening is you guys are co-creating a field that is representative of truth, of integrity, of light, of dark, of love, of compassion, right? And all of a sudden now you're all coming together and placing these pieces into the alchemical fire. And so everything that you're doing becomes amplified because now you have all these other men with the same intention and attention focused on that one thing. And so you think about it like working out alone, you might have a good workout, but you're not going to push yourself.
Yeah.
You work out with a group of men, you're going to look over to your right. This guy's still doing push-ups. Over here, this guy's still doing push-ups. It's going to push you to keep going. And so surrounding yourself by men who are also on this path, man, it makes you stand up taller. It makes you live in a higher level of truth. It makes you show up in a way that you wouldn't necessarily if you were on your own, right? And I think that we can draw inspiration from each other. Like at the end of the day, you are of me and I am of you. And so what I see in you as a great leader, I can only see that in you because it exists in me. And so we are coming together to be in each other's trusted counsel for what is a pivotal time in our evolution. Like there's a reason why these men's circles are coming online right now because they're fucking needed. And the men who do not, the lone wolf programming is only going to get you so far.
Yeah.
And doing this level of work with your woman is going to ruin your fucking relationship. You're going to destroy polarity in your relationship. Now she's your therapist. She's your fucking space holder. You can only open up with her. You're telling her when you're scared. You're telling her when you're sad. It's like, bro, stop.
She's not your mom.
She's not your mom and she's not your savior. Yeah. Come to the arena where other men are standing there with their shit.
Yeah.
And let's work through it. Let us in on your process. Let us in on your alchemical process. Share with the men. Shine a light on what is eating at you and what you're going through, and bring it to the fire.
Yeah.
Let us pray over it. Let us watch it burn together. Let us cheer you on and celebrate you and witness you and remind you when you forget about who the fuck you are. Because we forget. We're forgetful. We come into this incarnation and we have great amnesia, and oftentimes we won't be able to see ourselves in the distortions. And so the beauty of this experience is sometimes your brother will be able to see you greater than you can see yourself. And so you align with these men, and when you're having those periods or those moments or those cycles of forgetting who the fuck you are and what is with you in every moment that you enter, now you start to remember through his reflection. And so this, like surrounding yourself with men, and surrounding yourself with men who understand we're in a spiritual war. This is key. This is key. Surrounding yourself with men who understand that we are in a spiritual war. They understand what is at stake. They understand what are the forces at play that are trying to deceive us and extract from us. That this ain't just a walk in the park and like, yeah, I go to a men's group and yeah, we talk about our feelings and all that. No, bro. No, we're shifting the very fabric of reality. When you understand what we've been under for thousands of years, we're not here to play games, man.
It's a great undertaking because we are in the greatest awakening that Earth has ever seen in her whole existence, right? And I think about what a men's circle really is, and we talk about women, and your relationship with your mother takes you so far, right? And if you look back at past cultures, it was like men were taken from their mothers at some point and typically put into military. They were always stood shoulder to shoulder with other men, right? To become a man, to go through that initiation with other men, right? And when I think about a men's circle, the picture that always comes to my mind is almost like standing in a house of mirrors, right? Like I'm in the center and I can look in every direction, and these other men are my mirrors that will show me all the things that I can't see about myself from every different direction. And I can look at one man and there can be a reflection off of another man. And with that help, I can see all sides of myself.
Yeah.
right? And we have always in the past stood shoulder to shoulder with men. And it's something that's kind of, I want to say, been lost or taken from us in a sense, to weaken society.
Yeah. Yeah, if you think like no revolution in our existence has ever occurred without a group of men sitting in circle and being like, yo, we got to make a change.
Yeah.
Like, this is not in the best interest of our families. Let's do something about this. And so similarly, whether that's with yourself right now or the world around you, like coming together with men and being like, yo, we got to make a change, man. I'm projecting on my woman. We're repeating the same fucking pattern. I'm still watching porn and it's eating me up. I got all this sexual shame. I got all this shame and guilt and grief and like, what do I do with it? What do I do with it? Right? And so this work is everything.
Yeah.
This work is everything.
So I want to touch on something that you've talked about a couple of times now, which is pornography, which is something that we've really worked on within your men's group, the fellowship, which we can talk about also. But what would your advice be to a woman who has a husband that is struggling with pornography? And there's a few ways you could look at it, right? Because a lot of times you'll have a man that doesn't even see it as a problem.
Yeah.
And what does she do? Or a man that is trying to deal with it. How would you approach that as a woman that wants the most for her man? Because I see so many women like trying to control it and like,
yeah.
So I'd like your opinion on like how would you go about that as a woman that wants her man to fully step into his power, but he's extracting from this negative force that's pulling his life energy and his creative energy?
Yeah. I mean, you raise a really good point on the twofold of like, one, is he aware that it's a problem? And if he's not aware that it's a problem, then you might just be speaking to a wall.
Yeah.
Straight up. If he doesn't feel like there's some like thing here that he's using this to cope with, and he understands that it's not in his highest light, like if he doesn't even have that awareness, you can't really do much for him. Now, the man who has that awareness, first thing is what I would say is, and this might sound maybe not directly what people think I'm going to say, but the first thing is like offer him grace. Offer him grace in the way that you create a space in the relationship for him to feel safe enough to be honest with you. Because if he's hiding that shit, that's how it starts to fester and now eat away and poison the well that you both are drinking from. So you don't want to be in a relationship where this man is hiding things from you because he's afraid that you are going to become this tyrant and like lose yourself to your own feelings of not being safe and your own stories of abandonment and stuff like that. So there's that one piece of like, does he feel safe enough to come and tell you like, hey, I fell into it again. This is kind of what I feel is coming up for me. I've been dealing with it. Like, does he feel safe enough to come and be honest with you? The second thing too is like, you can communicate as a woman, you can communicate your needs as a desire. And so share with him your truth, which is, when you do this, I feel disconnected from you. When you're watching porn or when you're going into the playing with this kind of energy, I feel distant from you. I don't feel you as present with me. Yeah. Like, share with him your experience of it. And know that him making true change can only occur from within him. Yeah. No ultimatums, nothing like that. Like, no man ever woke up to himself because his woman gave him an ultimatum.
Yeah.
Okay?
It can't come from control on her end.
It can't come from suppression. Even on his end. Forget the woman out of the picture. Yeah. If he's just suppressing himself, he's feeding into this loop of shame. So, man, it's crazy, but you got to leave him be. And I don't mean leave him.
Right.
But I mean, like, can you try, if this man is aware and he's connected to his higher power, can you trust that God is working through this man, even when it feels like he's in the shit, even when it feels like he came back to a coping mechanism? Can you trust that he's being, like, things are aligning in his life for him to receive these layers of awareness, for then him to make a different choice? Because how do you know that when he jerked off for the 30th time that month, that wasn't the one that he was like, yo, I'm done with this shit.
Yeah.
There's another way. I need help. How do you know that it didn't take that one? And if you interfered and he stopped at the 10th one, it's still this like festering energy that's pulling at him, and he hasn't chosen for himself a different way. So there's this awareness too that, you know, what men are unlearning is very deep, and no man is going to be perfect. Your man is going to potentially go back.
Right.
He's going to falter. He's going to fall into old patterns. He's going to rise up again. And it's this constant learning and evolving. But love, compassion, grace, and also being firm. Like, as a woman, you're the gatekeeper for sex. And so women can pick up on the energy that you are coming to them with.
Right.
So is it coming from this lustful energy? I need to feed on you because I'm over-sexualized from all the content I'm watching. And now how do you as a woman interact with that? Do you put up the boundary and say, no, this energy is not clean. I'm not allowing this to penetrate me and seed my womb with whatever this is that wants to feed off of me. And so can you be aware of the energy that he's coming to you with? Can you be, you know, anchored in your heart enough to be loving in the way that might be uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Right? Because the highest form of love in that situation is not just to give into it. It's to actually like honor yourself at the highest level. So, you know, I always say too, and this is, I'm wondering what you think, like if women stopped sleeping with men who watched porn, the porn industry would go to shit.
Yeah.
That's how powerful women are.
I would think, but I also see the potential for the world to go in a different direction.
Just a bunch of incels, like nobody's in a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think a lot of men turn to porn because it's so much easier and more convenient way to fulfill that need, where actually coming in and truly connecting with the woman is harder for an unconscious man to do.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. Like, it seems like energetically, yes, that seems like that's how it would go.
Yeah. But that he's not going to that to fill a need of sex. He may believe that.
Yeah.
He may believe, oh, I'm not desired by my woman, or I need to fulfill my needs and I'm going to go do that. But more often than not, he's going to that to soothe his pain. He's going to that to soothe his boredom. He's going to that to soothe his unworthiness. He's going to that to escape.
Yeah. To suppress,
to find a way out, to get that dopamine hit, to go and then the same mechanics that he's used to. And so that's the other thing is like, we have not been taught as men through initiations and rites of passage as to what your sexual energy can actually bring you. What is it used for? We're just told that you came from a monkey, which is a psyop.
Yeah.
And that you are just designed to spread your seed and fuck as many women as possible. And if you don't, you will be a miserable man.
Yeah.
And that although your heart is drawing you to monogamy, you're actually built differently. And so you're going to continue fighting against your own very nature and be miserable. And so until a man starts to understand, okay, my sexual energy is not just to bust nuts, excuse my French.
No.
It's actually to create worlds. And so, yes, I'm built to spread my seeds of awareness, my seeds of compassion, my seeds of creation.
No.
But that's why what we're doing is so important, because the men who understand that this is just squandering the sacred codes of creation into nothingness, there's got to be a different way.
Yeah, so based on what you just said, like thinking about it, it almost seems like probably if women really led this in a way where they had those firm boundaries with men where they're not going to, engage with that type of energy if that's present in a man, it probably would send men into like a almost a dark night of the soul that they eventually would be forced to come out of through misery.
Yeah.
Right? Because they would be forced down into this deep, deep, dark hole of really having to find out the hard way that what they truly want is connection. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's not connection. It's false light.
Yeah. And I know some will hear this and say, "Oh, so you're putting the responsibility on women to make a difference for these men." And I'm not saying that. I'm saying that women are extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And that the feminine leads the expansion in consciousness. And so we see that even the animals are very important teachers for us. The male birds will build the nest based on what the female bird desires in order to be chosen to create life with her.
Yeah.
But he's not creating that nest based on what he wants. He's creating that nest based on what she will want. And so similarly, that's happening with us, and that we are, as men, building nests of consciousness for what the female desires, for us to continue creating life and expanding together. Yeah. And so it's not that the responsibility is on the women to fix the men from their shit and from leaking their sexual energy and all of this. It's like there is a dance here. And yeah, if you as a woman are aware of the energy that this man is coming to you with, which is one of like extraction, one of, I need to feed off of your body, I just want to use you right now. What are you letting in? What are you opening yourself up to?
Yeah, well, it's just really an embodiment of fully choosing what you desire for your life, right? And so, like, as a woman, if you're not setting those boundaries, then you're not embodying and fully choosing what you want for your life. And if you want a man that is able to fully connect with you,
yeah,
then you have to embody that through those boundaries. And it's not necessarily like a cutting him off. It's just a knowing fully what you want and right. choosing that through your actions.
Yeah.
Right. And so I love what you said. So essentially, if you're a woman and you have a man, I think, on that lower level that doesn't think that what he's doing is wrong, I think most of the time, if a man is telling his woman that he doesn't think it's wrong, he's lying. Right? I mean, yeah, there probably is a very low level of man that doesn't, and
or just sees it as normal.
Just sees it, just sees it as normal. But he knows, like, somewhere inside himself that it is pulling from his relationship, and that he could have something more with his woman, right? And so, kind of like you talked about, just planting those seeds of, like, through her, what she desires in the relationship, she can plant those seeds. But then at some point, if he doesn't respond to that, you may have to leave.
Yeah.
Right.
And the thing is, too, like, the effect of porn on a man's lens that he's viewing the world in, the effect of porn on a man's presence, it's really pulling at his attention. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be hard for this man to actually be present with his woman, to meet her where she desires to be met, because he's corrupted. His software is running like corrupted files. So I know that's a big pain for a lot of women, because, like, the thing is, too, part of the generational trauma and the collective feminine trauma is that, like, we've been abusing women.
No.
We've literally been using them, abusing them, not revering them, not honoring them, seeing them as objects, seeing them as just bodies. And so if your man is still basically a pawn of the system within your own home without any awareness to it, what are you then playing out in sticking by him? What does it mean for you to open yourself up to him, knowing that it's with this kind of imbalanced energy of extraction? So there's a lot of responsibility I feel that a woman has in the quality of her own relationship and what she's accepting for herself and what she's come to define as love. Right? So
yeah, and it's at that point it really is a choosing, right? You are choosing to remain in that reality where you have a man that is not fully connected with you. If you come into that awareness of knowing what you want and then not embodying it through your choice.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I love that answer. I just wanted to kind of touch on that subject because, you know, you and I have worked with men. I've worked with men in my own group. I've worked with myself deeply on that. And, you know, we've both been deep in that shit. And so we understand it to a level that I think can help a lot of men. And a lot of men fucking need it, bro, because your sexual energy is your creation energy. Yeah. And if you are putting that out into the nothingness, and you're just wasting your own power to create your own life in the way that you desire, in the way that your soul desires, right? So, yeah. So, when did we meet? Well, we met on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
So I found you on Instagram. I followed your wife for all her anti-government.
Shout out Shanti, yeah.
Yeah, Shanti's amazing.
Yeah.
We love you, Shanti. And all your awesome anti-government memes because we hate the government. And it was interesting because, you know, I saw you come into her life, and then it was weird because she posted about you, and I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And it was like, I recognize you, bro. It was really interesting, right? And then you and I kind of started to talk a little bit. It was probably like, when did you, how long have you guys been together?
I think now, so her and I have been together almost 3 years. And so you and I would have met a year and a half ago.
Okay. Yeah. So I chatted with you like probably a year before that. And then you and I actually started working together.
Yeah.
Just slid into your DMs and asked you if you'd help me out with some coaching. And yeah, dude, it was really special. Like from the very beginning, I just felt like I recognized you on a soul level. And you and I went through like 5-6 months of coaching.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a really dark time in my life, but you were there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, from that level, like that was a really special thing that like came into my life at the right time, and I really needed it. And then from there, you know, I saw you were doing the fellowship.
Yeah.
Right. And the fellowship we started almost 12 months ago, right? 12-month container.
Yeah.
And this is your third or fourth year doing it?
Fourth year.
Yeah, dude. And the fellowship has been so fucking special this year, man.
Yeah.
It is just this group of guys. I remember when I got on the very first call.
Yeah.
Right? And there was 60 of us.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what the fuck am I doing here? Bro, I'm like listening to some of these guys talk about like spirituality. And this is, you know, kind of when I'm just coming into like this world of spirituality as a man, you know, and I'm on this call and I'm listening to these guys talk, and I'm not understanding half of what they're saying. You know, like you and I had worked together a little bit, but I just saw these men as like these spiritual giants. And the process over the past 12 months as I've gotten to know so many of these men, and, you know, I've worked with a lot of them one-on-one, and we've created such a tight bond.
Yeah.
It's just been so fucking special, dude. And like being able to see my own progress through the eyes of these men, you know, and like really coming into like a much deeper belief in myself. You know, because you probably remember. I mean, when you and I were working together, I was like, I don't know what the fuck to do, bro.
It was early.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because these men see you as a general, and they feel what you're here to create.
Yeah.
For not just for yourself and your family, but for humanity. And so I know that you went through a huge alchemical process. And, you know, if you remember that day one session, I had every man declare their will to be in the group.
Yeah.
And so there's something really special about standing shoulder to shoulder with men who have declared their will that they're going to be there with you for a whole fucking year, no matter what you're going through, no matter what they're going through. Like, they're going to show up. They might, you know, go into their own dark period of hermiting, and then they'll come back and whatnot. But like, they're going to be there with you. And these men saw you. These men saw you and they recognized you, and they see you as a general, you know, and you really stepped forward as a leader, like right away.
Yeah.
Right away.
Yeah, dude, it's been a really, really fucking special process, and the fellowship will always have just a really special place in my heart. All these men have a very special place in my heart.
Yeah.
Because, you know, from like an abundance standpoint, in a sense, I was learning so much about what to do with my own men from the fellowship. You know, and there's always been just like full support from yourself and all the leaders within the group for me to, you know, go do your men's work, you know, learn from us and take it with you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just been so fucking special, man. I can't say enough good about the fellowship, and I appreciate the fuck out of you, bro, for all the work that we've done together. And, yeah, bro, it's just the beginning for us. We'll be doing a lot of cool shit together, I think. I'm really excited about the work that we're all doing, you know, and we're doing it together. And now you guys came into town for my wedding.
Let's go, man.
It's going to be a hell of a weekend. We had a great fucking day. The fucking power that we're bringing in can just be felt. Yeah. And, you know, I feel like this weekend is like a real portal of like creation. Like we're going to go away from this and just like go into our own worlds, like fully fucking juiced up and ready to create.
Yeah.
You know, create from that soul aligned purpose, you know, for what we're really here to do, what we're meant to do in this life, in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, bro, I hope you give yourself enough credit, because when I first met you, you right away were ready to serve. Like right away, you were put in a place of service to call these men together to start building Conscious Warrior.
Yeah.
And, you know, to anybody listening, like, look, man, start your own fucking men's group.
Yes.
Get out there. Like my first men's group, the fellowship, the first iteration was me and 2 guys meeting every week online for an hour. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Start your own group. There will never be enough men's groups in this world. Right. Start your own group, join a group, get into the work. And the thing is, like, it's not just dipping your toe. Like, dive deep into the depths of your existence. Lean the fuck into where you are right now. Like, the only thing you will be buried with is your excuses. And so, what are you holding right now? Get out of your own fucking way. Step into that fully. Commit fully to it. And it doesn't mean it's going to be this one giant arc of perfection and everything. No, you're going to go, when you commit to this, you're committing to going into the depths of it. And so just go. Just go.
Yeah, because why would you live any other way, man? Especially when you see that this is a game, right? This is just a game, right? And in that sense, why not play the game full out, right? Why not go for the most soul-expanding path that you can, right? Because that's what we're here to do. And when you can understand that this is just a game, then you might as well go full speed ahead.
And we feel it. And we feel it. We feel what path feels the most expansive to us. We know. And honestly, like, brothers listening, it's okay. Like, what I see happening right now, the state of the world is essentially a byproduct of the unintegrated masculine shadow. So even look at the name, the shadow government. So what this means to me is if the macro is a mirror of the micro, and the shadow government has been running the show, and the show has been extraction and misery, then where in your life is the shadow government running your experience of reality? And now as this existing system starts to come crumbling down, once again, if this is a byproduct of the unintegrated masculine shadow, what this means for me and you and the men listening is an utter implosion of their identity. You're going to have to come crumbling down with the system, because it is mirroring you. And so let this death happen. Let this wash over you. You already know what needs to go. You already know what feels expansive, what step wants to be taken. Lean into this implosion.
Yeah.
Like, don't resist it. Don't fight it, because it'll strengthen and it'll make you even more miserable. Like, you need to let this death happen. and like release and relax into it and just surrender into where you're being guided. Because ultimately, if you're listening to this, you already know what we're talking about. And you are on the ground here. You are on the cusp of this great awakening. You're not listening to this by accident. So what do you want to do about it?
Yeah.
What do you want to do about it? It's time to show up. Attendance is mandatory. Like there is no escape plan.
Yeah.
There is no fail safe. There is no fail safe. Like this is it. This is it. You came here for this. You came here for this, and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always tell guys, like, follow your fear, right? Walk through it, right? Because a lot of times, and you'll know, like, the path that you're supposed to go down, but usually that path has this, like, wall of fear that's stopping you from walking, and you want to turn away from it. But I always tell guys, like, you want to really do this, you want to really play this game, walk through that motherfucker.
Yeah.
Walk through that motherfucker, and you will expand your soul in a way that on the other side of that, your soul is going to be expanded and more fulfilled than it possibly could be if you continue to turn away from that fear. And so often, like, the unconscious man will just constantly be running from the fear.
Yeah.
But the conscious man sees fear, that it's this fucking beautiful tool we have.
Yeah.
Like, what are you scared of? Cool. Let's go at it head on. Let's run our truck through that motherfucking fear.
Well, you know the story of the bull, right? So when the storm approaches, all the animals turn away from it and run in the opposite direction. But eventually they slow down and the storm catches up to them and swallows them up.
The bison.
Whereas the bison face the storm and run towards it, and then they pass through it super quick. And so the beauty of fear, and what he's saying is that if every fear can be broken down into the fear of death, every fear that you're experiencing, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of your greatness, fear of taking the next step, and what will people think of me, and all of this stuff, every fear can be broken down into the fear of death.
Yeah.
And so when you face that fear of death, the you that is stepping out on the other side of that threshold is the eternal self. So as you walk through the door of fear, who you are on the other end is the eternal self, because you face the fear of your non-existence through that unique story. And so every time, like, bro, I experience fear and self-doubt with every step I take.
Yeah, me too.
Because a fearless man is a dead man.
Yeah.
And so if the goal is to be fearless, you're fooling yourself. The goal is to face your fear, to draw courage from that fear, to find out what you're made of, to see how committed you are. You think this is going to come easy? You think you're just going to get this shit easily? No, you're going to have to face the very thing that's whispering to you, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Don't do it. You're going to die. And you're going to say, okay, I hear you, and I'm safe, and I'm being pulled in this direction, and I trust, and I surrender to where I'm being guided, and I'm going in that direction. And that's it. And so whatever you are facing that is scaring you, like you were saying, this is a game. If you knew you were playing a game right now, would you acquiesce to the fear? Would you shrink to the fear? So I have a story. The first time I did DMT, synthetic DMT, smoking it from a crack pipe, I'm sitting in the closet, hitting my DMT. I end up breaking through. I put the pipe down, and this being comes to me. And I'm so scared of death that the whole time I'm like basically saying, holding myself like this, but I couldn't see my body. But I could feel that I was holding myself like this. And I was like saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And the realization came that you're praying to yourself. And this being came, and she held her hands open to me. And as I put my hands out, terrified, put my hands out on her hands, all of a sudden, her midsection became all of these visions. And I started to see how this is just a game. We're literally playing a holographic spiritual game. 2 weeks later, a friend calls me. I hadn't seen him in 20 years. He calls me. He's coming to town. He's like, I'm going bungee jumping. Do you want to come with me? My first reaction was, no, fuck that. I don't go bungee jumping, bro. I'm not going to do that shit. And then it was like, bro, you just found out it's a video game. would you go bungee jumping in a video game? And I was like, yeah. And the message was so clear. It was like, then you have to do this to prove to yourself that it's a game. Because to do the opposite, you go back to sleep. To turn away from this truth will cause you to dissociate and go back to sleep. And so it was like, you need to go bungee jumping. Go bungee jumping with him. 2 months later, this guy's back in town, back in town. He's like, yo, bro, I'm going skydiving. You want to come with me? And I was like, all right, let's do it. And so everything that comes up, awakening is a silent yes to all of it. It's like this silent, like, okay, I know that this is calling me forward for my soul's greatest expansion. Yes. And you'll experience fear along the way.
Yeah.
And let it be your companion.
Yeah.
Let it be your companion.
Yeah, because, like you're saying, fear always boils down to every fear that you have essentially boils down to a fear of death at your base level programming.
Yeah.
And you can continue to turn away from that, and you will continue to have that fear of death and actually almost be dead in a sense. But if you turn towards that fear and walk through it, on the other side of that fear of death is life. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the code. That is, if the fear of death is governing your life, you are already dead.
Yes. Yeah.
You are already dead. And it's never actually the fear of our death. It's the fear of our perceived pain from non-existing. It's not actually that we're afraid that we're going to die. We're afraid of the pain that will come from not existing. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which isn't real.
Which isn't real.
Yeah.
Which isn't real. So this is kind of also where, deep shadow work comes in, and inner child healing. Like, grab your inner child by the hand and say, I know you're scared. I'm scared too, but we got to go in this direction. This is what is best for us. Let's go.
Because on the other side of this is more life.
More life, right?
Yeah.
More life, more fulfillment. It's where you will find yourself. It's where you will find what you're made of. And nothing's going to come easy in this life. Like there's ease to life, but it's not going to come easy. And there's a vetting process with every next expansion, every next embodiment. There must be a vetting process to see, can you hold this embodiment?
Yeah.
Right? And so the more that we're able to hold, the more courage we're able to embody, the more this kind of crystallizes in our being. Right? And so you'll never be ready. You'll never not be scared. You will meet your readiness when you take that step.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded of GSP, George St. Pierre, very famous, like UFC fighter, one of the greatest of all times. And he would say, like, every fight, this man's one of the baddest men to ever walk the planet. And he says, every fight, he's scared.
Yeah.
Think of that. This man is a trained killer going into a cage, and he's scared. And so being scared is okay. It's going to keep you sharp. But when we let it capture us and limit our experience, limit our lives, like, whose life are you living? Whose life are you living at that point? Because it's not yours. If you're living through your fears, it's not really your life to live. You're actually in submission to the fear. And here's the next thing that's coming to me. If death is an illusion in this game, it's real. We will experience losing our physical bodies, but we will not actually cease to exist. And so if you fall for that illusion, some would say that that's one of the devil's moves, is to make you not believe in God, to make you not believe in the eternal. And so when you follow your fear of death, who are you actually following?
God.
Well, if you're following the fear of death, you're not.
If you're walking through your fear,
if you're
of death,
walking
then
through
you're
that
following
fear,
God.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah, I say it all the time. No man that ever did anything great or let me rephrase this. Every man that ever did anything great was scared when he did it, but he did it anyway. Every man that ever did anything great was scared when he did it. Right? Like, we see these people who have done great things, and we have this weird assumption that we can't do them because we're too scared. And then they must not have been scared.
Yeah.
But it's not true. Every man that I know that has ever done anything great, he was scared when he did it. Whether he showed it or told anybody about it or not, he was scared.
Yeah. And that's the men we respect.
Yeah.
Not the ones that it's come easy to them and this, and they never struggled, and no, you respect the men who have walked that walk,
Yeah.
who have climbed that mountain, that have faced all the projections and the shame and the judgment and their own fears and all of their own self-doubt and unworthiness and all of this stuff, and they like continued forward.
Yeah.
Like, these are the men that inspire and become an inspirational man in your own story. Like, you are the hero in your journey. You are the hero in your journey.
Yeah.
So bring that energy to your life, and it's okay, man. Yo, we're all going to falter. We're all going to, at times, follow the fear. And still everything is perfect. Even in following that fear, we're getting feedback of like, okay, now I understand I picked fear. Because fear will veil itself as logic.
Yeah.
Fear will give you every reason why it's the right thing to do.
Based on our program to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But notice how our survival mode programming has been now inverted and used against us to keep us imprisoned and not actually facing imminent danger. Like, your fear of death is valuable. It's going to keep you alive. But we're using that mechanism where there's not an actual threat.
Yeah.
So overcoming that is going to be a great thing. And man, like you said, no man ever stepped into his greatness without experiencing fear before it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Ihsan,
My bro.
fucking love you, bro.
Love you too, man.
Appreciate everything you've done for me. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we close off? Anything in specific that you wanted to say?
Just recognition and acknowledgement of what you've done. You know, not just this podcast, not just with the men, but just in your own life. And like the man that you strive to continue to be and embody, and how you show up for the world. Like, I draw inspiration from that. You are a true leader, you know, and every man listening to this is a leader in his own right.
Yeah.
You know, and the way you've taken leadership of your life and that being translated now to the things that you're creating, that is within every man's ability. So the men listening, like, you are the leader of your life.
Yeah.
And so follow that truth, the highest truth in your heart. And yeah, stay committed, stay devoted. This is it. We came here for this. Let's go.
Yeah, bro.
Let's go.
It's just the beginning.
Let's go, baby.
People can find you on Instagram at eyes_in.
eyes__in__.
Yeah.
So double underscore is eyes in. Yeah.
Cool. Fuck yeah. Thank you for coming on today, bro. It was super fucking fun. I appreciate you, and it's just the fucking beginning.
Let's go, baby.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next one.